Eric Schlosser, Command and Control, Nuclear Weapons, The Damascus Accident, and the Illusion of Safety. Embark on a gripping journey with Eric Schlosser's Command and Control, Nuclear Weapons, The Damascus Accident, and the Illusion of Safety, a riveting examination of the world's nuclear arsenal and the dramatic race between world powers to develop atomic weapons. Gain insights into the intricacies of nuclear fission and explore pivotal moments such as the Manhattan Project, the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the ensuing significance of the Atomic Energy Act of 1946. Delve into the chilling world of nuclear armament during the Cold War era and witness how the Strategic Air Command dealt with the threats of the time. Discover the tense events through the years, including the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Damascus Accident, which nearly escalated warfare to cataclysmic levels.
Birth of the Atomic Age. On July 12, 1945, the Manhattan Project, a collaboration of British, US, and Canadian physicists, positioned a plutonium core within the first nuclear bomb in a New Mexico farmhouse. The bomb comprised a series of high explosives designed to implode the core, initiating a massive chain reaction explosion. Two materials, uranium-235 and plutonium-239, were identified as triggers for fission, the process of atoms splitting and releasing energy. In controlled environments like nuclear power plants, fission produces energy for electric generation. However, during the first bomb test on July 17, 1945, the outcome was uncertain. Scientist Donald Horning created the X-unit, an electronic device to simultaneously set off all 32 explosives in the bomb, completely surrounding the core in a geometric pattern. The initial test resulted in a monumental mushroom cloud, a sight that left some spectators contemplating their visions of doomsday. Hiroshima, Nagasaki and Nuclear Dilemma. In 1945, World War II was devastating lives as the world pondered the potential use of nuclear weapons. America grappled with the idea of a public demonstration versus the direct bombing of Japan. Ultimately, the U.S. military and the president opted for unannounced bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, resulting in Japan's unconditional surrender. However, the birth of this new weapon led to various opinions on how nuclear power should be controlled and regulated, eventually culminating in the Atomic Energy Act of 1946. During a dark period of history in June 1945, World War II persisted in the Pacific, sparking discussions on how to deploy atomic bombs to induce Japan's surrender. While some proposed a public demonstration in an unpopulated area, the fear of a failed detonation led the U.S. to pursue a stealthier approach. On August 6, 1945, the 10,000-pound bomb known as Little Boy was dropped on Hiroshima, unleashing an explosion equivalent to 12 to 18 kilotons of TNT. Surprisingly, this catastrophic event was still not enough to convince the Japanese emperor to surrender. A mere 3 days later, a second bomb called Fat Man fell upon Nagasaki. Despite a last-minute rewiring of the bomb's dangerous explosives, it detonated with an even more powerful blast than its predecessor. Facing immense destruction, Japan finally surrendered unconditionally. With the realization of the nuclear weapon's destructive potential, varied perspectives emerged on how to regulate and control this newfound power. In fact, some military personnel, such as U.S. Air Force General Henry H. Arnold, advocated for an immediate ban on nuclear weapons. After intense debates, the Atomic Energy Act of 1946 was signed, introducing civilian oversight of America's nuclear program through the Joint Committee on Atomic Energy, comprised of politicians. However, the struggle for influence didn't end here. The politicians assigned to oversee the program were tasked with collaborating with military officers as advisors. Yet, in the years to come, the battle for control over nuclear power would only intensify between these factions. Cold War's perilous arms race. The Cold War dashed any hope of global control over nuclear weapons. The United States and the Soviet Union were driven to build stronger bombs in response to geopolitical events and each other's progress. This period saw massive advancements in nuclear technology, pushing humanity to the brink of destruction. During the Cold War, the possibility of a world government overseeing nuclear weapon production and management became bleak. Two major events exacerbated tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union: the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia in 1948 and the successful Soviet nuclear bomb test in 1949. Consequently, the U.S. lived in constant fear of a Soviet invasion in Europe for 40 years. In response to these fears, Congress debated whether to rely on conventional warfare or adopt an atomic blitz strategy, heavily dependent on nuclear weapons. The atomic blitz approach prevailed, giving rise to the Strategic Air Command (SAC) in preparation for potential nuclear strikes. As the Cold War dragged on, a dangerous arms race continued between the superpowers. Both countries started with Mark III implosion bombs from World War II, but soon the U.S. began developing more advanced weapons. The Mark IV, which stored its nuclear core separately from the bomb and featured a safer detonation system, was soon replaced by the tenfold more powerful Mark VI. Eventually, the lighter yet equally powerful Mark VII emerged. Simultaneously, both nations raced to create a hydrogen bomb. The U.S. completed its first experimental test of a liquid-fueled H-bomb on November 1, 1952, yielding an explosion 500 times more powerful than Nagasaki's bomb. A solid-fueled H-bomb test followed on March 1, 1954, in Bikini Atoll, demonstrating a 15-megaton explosion. The Soviets were close behind, conducting their major thermonuclear test, RDS-6, in August 1953. Throughout the Cold War, both powers' relentless pursuit of nuclear superiority edged humanity ever closer to the brink of obliteration. Balancing nuclear safeguards. The Strategic Air Command (SAC) employed extensive checklists and drills to maintain preparedness in the nuclear arms race. The growing nuclear weapon stockpile posed considerable human and mechanical risks, particularly with storage facilities being in close proximity to populated areas. Following the Soviet Union's launch of the Sputnik satellite in 1957, concerns about the United States losing the Cold War intensified, leading to increased development of more powerful weapons. Scientists Robert Purifoy and Carl Carlson, who worked for the Research and Development Laboratory Sandia under contract with the U.S. military, advocated for additional safety measures. However, many government and military officials opposed these measures due to the potential for increased risk of bombs failing to detonate when needed and the high costs of retrofitting existing bombs. Nuclear calamities waiting to happen. Numerous nuclear accidents in the past have highlighted genuine concerns about global safety. The Moroccan incident of a burning Mark 36 hydrogen bomb, an atomic bomb accidentally dropped over South Carolina, and the first detailed safety report on nuclear weapons, which revealed a chilling average of 7 bombs accidentally dropped per year, raise alarm bells. As nuclear technology advanced, the likelihood of even more incidents increased. An equally concerning factor has been the psychological element, with the lack of a screening process for the military personnel handling these deadly weapons. European stockpiles remained especially vulnerable due to insufficient security measures, risking a potential nuclear Armageddon. When B-52s risked apocalypse. The B-52 bomber, despite being a significant carrier of nuclear weapons, was often plagued by technical issues, endangering safety and security. Throughout the 1960s, multiple incidents demonstrated the potential risk these bombers posed. One such event took place in 1961 when a B-52 crashed in California, though luckily without detonating the hydrogen bombs it carried. Another episode involved an Appalachian Mountain crash, where 2 crew members perished while the undetonated H-bombs were recovered. In 1966, a collision occurred near southern Spain, where a B-52 disintegrated and 1 bomb partially detonated, causing a radioactive leak. The troubled history of the B-52 bombers is worth noting. For all their importance in the military as carriers of nuclear firepower, these aircraft were not immune to accidents. One such occurrence was in 1961, when a B-52 crashed due to a malfunction in a California barley field. The aircraft held two Mark 39 hydrogen bombs that, fortunately, did not explode in the impact. Only a few weeks later, another B-52 suffered from turbulence while flying over the Appalachian Mountains. The aircraft's tail broke off, resulting in a disastrous crash into the mountainside. The two Mark 53 H-bombs the plane was carrying were later recovered undetonated, but not all 5 crew members survived the impact. Matters only worsened in 1966 when a B-52 attempting an air-to-air refueling caused a mid-air collision off the coast of southern Spain. This accident led to the fuel airship exploding, killing everyone on board. Of the B-52 crew, only 2 managed to survive when the craft broke apart, scattering 4 Mark 28 H-bombs. The United States took a month to locate all 4 of them, and even then, one had partially detonated, putting the surrounding area at risk. In the 1970s, a new threat to nuclear weapon security arose with growing drug culture infiltrating military personnel. Even those responsible for nuclear bomb storage were affected. A case in point is the North Carolina Air Force Base, where over 150 personnel faced marijuana charges. Furthermore, a Missouri base saw over 230 officers arrested for drug-related offenses. The discovery of hashish, heroin, and LSD in military workstations and barracks was a common and alarming occurrence during this time. The Unstoppable SIOP Plan. The Single Integrated Operational Plan, SIOP, was an early IBM computer program strategy that aimed at ensuring the total destruction of an enemy during the U.S. nuclear response. Developed in the late 1950s, SIOP devised plans for the optimal annihilation using thousands of nuclear weapons. Disturbingly, once SIOP was set into motion, it could not be stopped, which left many newly elected presidents shaken. Moreover, SIOP almost went into effect during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, while faulty computer systems at NORAD have come perilously close to initiating it on several occasions. In an era of heightened nuclear tensions, the United States sought technological innovations to maintain ultimate control over its arsenal. The 1950s saw the establishment of NORAD, the first-ever computer network, to connect radar systems of Air Force bases nationwide to detect Soviet attacks. Additionally, a groundbreaking IBM computer was employed to devise the U.S. nuclear response by creating the Single Integrated Operational Plan, SIOP. Designed in the late 1950s, SIOP's primary objective was to annihilate the enemy with 75% probability through strategic targeting. On December 2, 1960, the plan employed 3,423 nuclear weapons aimed at 1,000 ground zeros, effectively extinguishing over 3,700 targets and an estimated 220 million lives. While the aftermath and fallout would grievously impact the world, the chilling reality of SIOP was that once initiated, there was no turning back. Presidents who learned about SIOP were understandably shaken by the plan's unstoppable nature and the catastrophic level of destruction it would cause. Distressingly, there were instances when SIOP nearly went into action. During the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, as the U.S. was at DEFCON 2, 65 bombers took off, and nuclear submarines assumed strike positions. Thankfully, the crisis was averted when the Soviet Union agreed to withdraw its weapons from Cuba. However, the potential for accidental initiation of SIOP remains troubling. NORAD has mistakenly identified incoming Soviet missiles multiple times, with one incident resulting from a test program erroneously running as a genuine threat. Fortunately, level-headed thinking averted disaster in each case, but the unstoppable nature of SIOP remains a lingering concern. The Arkansas Nuclear Incident. In 1968, a report revealed that an average of 130 significant nuclear weapon accidents occurred each year since 1950. One of the most notable accidents took place in 1980 at an underground missile silo in Arkansas, where a dropped socket led to a dangerous vapor release from a Titan II rocket carrying a high-risk W-53 warhead. As the lack of a specific protocol caused confusion among staff members, the incident ultimately showcased bureaucratic inefficiency and the need for improved safety measures. Between 1950 and 1968, there were 1,200 incidents involving nuclear weapons, with 13 of these classified as broken arrows, accidental firings or detonations that released radioactive materials. These accidents persisted into the 1980s, with one catastrophic event occurring at a missile silo in rural Arkansas on September 18, 1980. An active Titan II rocket was being maintained at the silo, equipped with a highly dangerous W-53 warhead, considered one of the most powerful and prone to accidental detonation. Additionally, the Titan II rocket housed a hazardous fuel tank, containing toxic liquid propellants and a highly explosive oxidizer. During a routine oxidizer tank refill, a maintenance crew member accidentally dropped a metal socket, which fell 70 feet and struck the rocket, causing a deadly vapor cloud to rapidly fill the silo. Despite alarms and warning lights, confusion and panic ensued among staff, as there was no established procedure to address this particular situation. As the toxic vapor cloud continued to rise, the surrounding area was evacuated, including personnel in the control room behind blast doors. News reporters and onlookers soon arrived at the scene, as the Air Force and Strategic Air Command, SAC, followed a slow bureaucratic process to address the crisis. This incident highlights the urgent need for better safety protocols and streamlined decision-making when dealing with potentially catastrophic nuclear accidents. Titan II, Deadly Missteps. Air Force missile mechanic Jeff Kennedy's expertise was wasted when bureaucracy delayed action to address a Titan II situation. The resulting plan led to the eventual explosion, due in part to a series of avoidable decisions stemming from misinformation and miscommunication. Jeff Kennedy, a trusted Air Force missile mechanic, responded to an urgent call about a Titan II emergency. Once on site, he understood the severity of the situation and had a solution in mind. However, bureaucratic processes prevented a swift response, causing a nearly 8-hour delay before the plan's approval. The approved plan included a series of misguided decisions. For instance, technicians were directed to use the silo's main door instead of the escape hatch, based on the false assumption that they would not fit while wearing protective gear. Although Kennedy recognized the error, he dutifully complied. Kennedy and his colleague, David Livingston, entered the toxic environment, as confirmed by a vapor reader registering over 21,000 parts per million, and were forced to retreat due to the dangers posed. Despite knowing that a spark could generate catastrophic results, Livingston was instructed to activate the ventilation fan in an attempt to disperse the volatile vapor. As Kennedy anticipated, the fan's activation triggered a massive explosion, momentarily illuminating the night sky with a pillar of fire. The disaster might have been averted if Kennedy's expertise had been trusted and expedited, but the reliance on time-consuming bureaucracy led to a series of ill-advised decisions and disastrous consequences. Brink of nuclear catastrophe. David Livingston's death in the Damascus missile incident highlighted the precarious state of nuclear weapons during the 1980s. The election of Ronald Reagan, increased defense spending, and dangerous geopolitical maneuvers intensified the risk of nuclear war. The able Archer 83 drill unknowingly edged the world dangerously close to the brink of total catastrophe, narrowly averting a preemptive Soviet strike. In a tragic turn of events, David Livingston became the sole casualty of the Damascus missile explosion, while others faced severe burns and injuries. The incident's investigation concluded that the Titan II rocket remained basically safe and held lower-ranking officers responsible. However, the 1980s saw nuclear risk escalate as the most dangerous year, 1983, loomed on the horizon. Following the Damascus episode, Ronald Reagan won the presidency, resulting in a $1.5 trillion defense budget that expanded the nuclear arsenal. This expansion included the Pershing II missile, whose limited 1,000-mile range aimed to devastate Moscow within 10 minutes. As tensions mounted, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan and the United States countered by infiltrating Soviet airspace and conducting naval exercises near their bases. Adding fuel to the fire, the Soviets shot down Korean Airlines Flight 007 after it mistakenly entered Soviet territory, killing 269 passengers in September 1983. A month later, the U.S. military toppled a Soviet-aligned communist government in Grenada. However, the most perilous event emerged when NATO conducted Able Archer 83, a nuclear war authorization simulation. Considering the imminent arrival of the Pershing II, the timing of the drill could not have been less favorable. The KGB, after intercepting drill communication, misinterpreted the situation as a legitimate nuclear threat, inching the Soviet Union dangerously close to executing a preemptive strike. Fortunately, the drill concluded, assuaging Soviet fears and averting a potential catastrophe that would have had unimaginable consequences for the world. Reinventing nuclear safety. Ronald Reagan's viewing of the film, The Day After, in 1983 had a significant impact on his perception of nuclear warfare and eventually led to efforts to reduce nuclear arms during the Cold War. In response to years of warnings, the military began implementing safety improvements for its nuclear stockpile, such as retrofitting weapons with enhanced safety devices. While some progress has been made, there is still much room for improvement, particularly in addressing potential threats from nuclear-armed nations like India and Pakistan, as well as the risk of nuclear weapons falling into the hands of extremists. Ronald Reagan's profound experience watching the made-for-TV film, The Day After, in 1983 shifted his views on nuclear warfare radically. The film depicted the grim reality of ordinary civilians enduring a nuclear war, and it left Reagan and many others shaken. As a result, the president declared that nuclear war cannot be won and must not be fought. This new mindset coincided with that of Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev, and together they worked on reducing their nation's nuclear arsenals, ultimately bringing an end to the Cold War. Around the same time, the military heeded long-standing warnings from Robert Purifoy and agreed to allocate funds towards improving the safety of its nuclear arsenal. The House Foreign Affairs Committee's assessment of the U.S. weapons safety revealed a need for significant enhancements. Out of all assessed weapons, only 3 received an A grade, whereas 12 were given a D. Since then, additional safety measures have been introduced, such as a barcode system to prevent accidental transportation of armed weapons. However, the danger of nuclear conflict persists, and the growing nuclear capabilities of India and Pakistan have become a significant concern. The tense relationship between the two nations combined with the presence of Islamic radicals in the region, who have attempted to steal nuclear weapons in the past, emphasizes the urgent need for enhanced security measures and continuing efforts towards nuclear disarmament.
The resounding message of command and control is the alarming fragility of safety measures surrounding nuclear weapons through history. From near-catastrophic accidents to horrifying technological miscalculations, the potential to reach doomsday trudged perilously close numerous times. It is crucial to realize that safety still poses grave concerns in the present. Nuclear weapons continue to be a salient issue in international relations, and the sheer devastation they can cause is an unnerving reality that hangs over the world. This book illuminates the critical importance of vigilance, safety protocols, and global efforts to avoid precarious situations that could lead to disaster.